the I personally knew that the Twins were overachieving, especially in the pitching aspect here. But they've got a huge series here after Texas. They go to Cleveland for 3 games. How important for them is that series? They're only up now. It went from a double-digit lead to now 6.5. How important is that series going to be for the Twins?
Well, it's remarkably important, and it's the one coming right out of the All-Star break. So an interesting one. I think the All-Star break does probably come at a pretty good time for the Twins, just based off of some of the injuries that they've had. Nelson Cruz now dabbling with a little bit of something that's probably okay, but the injuries that they've had, this comes at the right time. But still, the Indians have crept right behind them in the standings, 6.5 back, as you mentioned. They've won 4 straight as of this Saturday. And then if they go into Cleveland and something like get swept or even just lose this series, I think that could be an interesting wake-up call to the Twins front office. At that point, there would only be, about 2 weeks left before the deadline. That series, I think, will be a pretty telling one. After that, not a whole lot. They play the Mets and the A's. But then before the deadline, once again, another huge series when the Yankees come to town 22 to 24 of July. That one, I think, will be, maybe the most interesting series of these first few months before the deadline. And then just to see how the front office reacts with the deadline looming after series against Cleveland and against the Yankees. And what happens specifically if the struggles continue out of the break and if they lose a series against the Indians, and then if they drop or, even are swept by the Yankees later this month. It'll be fascinating to me to see how they respond to that.
Yeah, and it's hard to look a lot into these series. In football, you can get a good indicator on how you stack up against the great teams. Baseball, it's a less kind of telling because anyone can beat anyone on a given day. But I do think the Cleveland series is huge. The Yankee series is huge to be able to see how you stack up against them. But when you look at this Twins team, I think you think bullpen and starting pitching. If you are the Twins GM here, who are you targeting and what are you more concerned about, the starting pitching or the bullpen?
I'm probably a little bit more concerned about the bullpen. However, once you get to October, we've seen time and time again these great lineups sort of fall quiet as that cold weather comes in and as the starting pitching ramps up a bit. Obviously, everybody's talking about Madison Bumgarner, I think largely because of what he's done in the postseason and the success that he's had there. He's an incredibly intriguing option, but I would pump the brakes a little bit on him. Yes, he's still, a pitcher who's striking out more than a batter an inning, and I think has some positive years still ahead of him. But to think that he is the same Madison Bumgarner of, 3-4 years ago when he was consistently top 5 in Cy Young voting, would be a bit of a stretch. Now, I do think that it was interesting. There was a story on The Athletic, I think earlier this month or the end of June, in which the San Francisco Giants writer sat down with him and sort of, did a piece recognizing that, hey, you've been with the Giants since you were 19 years old. You're now 29. Just looking back on the decade, where he is today, how far he's come. And one of the things that he said there is, as I enter my 30s now, I know that I'm not going to be the pitcher that I was every regular season when, he was putting up some pretty remarkable numbers, say 2013, 14, 15, 16. But one thing that I did find interesting that he said is he still thinks that come the playoffs, come October, he can ramp it up and get the job done. And to me, I do think still that he would be an incredibly valuable piece, partly because of that, but also, just with a relatively young team and a team that hasn't been to the playoffs a ton. I think that that's invaluable what he could add in terms of just having been there and knowing how to handle those situations.
100% agreed. I've always made this point here. When you have to go to Yankee Stadium, you look at the Twins starting pitching. Do you trust Jake Odorizzi? Do you trust Jose Barreros? Do you trust Kyle Gibson? If you throw in a Madison Bumgarner, there's not even a question that you trust him to go against the Yankees or the Astros over any of those three. And granted, they don't have a lot of playoff experience, but I think that's a move that is necessary in the sense that you don't know if you're going to be in this position next year. You saw the Twins a few years ago make it to the wild card game, and you thought, okay, this is, it's only going to go forward here. And then they have the disappointing season last year. They've been so inconsistent here that I think they have to almost make a move at the trade deadline. Let's just talk about overall here. Obviously, we talk about the hitting, number one in runs, number one in hits. The home runs, I think they have 165 now. Who has been the MVP of this team in your eyes, hitting-wise, in this lineup?
Oh, man, that's a great question. I mean, Eddie Rosario probably stands out to me just because of the remarkable season that he's had, but it's probably him or the other guy that is in the corner of the outfield with him, Max Kepler. The two of those guys already at 20 home runs. Rosario dealing with some injuries. The way that Kepler, I thought, last week or the week before when all of the injuries were going down, he gets hit on the elbow, he's swollen, he's, not in good shape. At any other point in the Twins season, probably a stretch that he takes a few games off. And yet, with Rosario already down, with Gonzalez down at that point, with some of the injuries that they were dealing with, Kepler just, basically kept rolling, told Rocco, it doesn't matter that I'm hurt. I know that I'm not 100%, but, you can't afford to lose another outfielder right now. Buxton was still out. So, I think that he's just been a great team guy first, but also when you look at what he's done, at the plate, it's got to be, in my opinion, either Rosario or Kepler. I don't think you can go wrong with either of those two.
And it's just it's great to see your younger guys, finally, it's coming to fruition, what you've thought. Buxton, Polanco, Kepler, Rosario, they're finally really making that next step. So that is a great sight to see as a Twins fan. Let's shift gears here to the NHL team, and that is the Minnesota Wild, who, I'll be honest with you, Chad, I don't know exactly what they're trying to do. I don't know, you saw what Fenton was doing in the middle of the season, trading away Coyle and Nino and Granlund, and it kind of made sense that they're trying to get younger. But then they go out and they sign Matt Zuccarello, who's 31, to a 5-year, $30 million deal. What are your thoughts here on the Wild and their offseason so far?
I just think that it's kind of a team that doesn't know where it wants to get to or what it is, even what its identity is. I mean, when you go back to the beginning, it was Paul Fenton's first day. We're going to make a couple tinkers. We're still going to be very good. We're still going to be a playoff team. I'm not here to make major changes. Then they struggled the way that they did after Matt Dumba's injury, and it was like, all right, well, now let's unload some pieces. We need some bigger changes. Then they make those bigger changes, and outside of the trade that nets them Ryan Donato for Charlie Coyle, those trades were largely poor ones, and especially in the Nino for Victor Rask one, atrocious one. So then it seems like, all right, well, now we're a rebuilding team that, we just need some right wings. We want to get younger. Let's go get some right shot young players. And then they go out and get a left shot aging player. And I know that, Matt Zuccarello is not going to be the issue, and largely it sounds like he plays the right side, even though he's a left shot guy. But I've seen a lot of people pretty happy and pretty optimistic about that deal. I still am pretty weary about that one, in part because of the age that you mentioned, but also even when he's been at his best as a playmaker, he's had one 60-point season. It's not like this is a guy who's getting to 60 season in and season out. He's struggled a bit of late, and he just doesn't have that consistency. And the other thing is, the Wild need a goal scorer. They've needed a goal scorer since I moved to Minnesota 7 years ago. They've needed a goal scorer since Marian Gaborik left, and they bring in another left shot playmaker. So I don't know. I find it very difficult to be optimistic about the Wild right now.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head. This is a team, Zuccarello just reminds me of another kind of Zucker type of player, and I like Zucker. I think he's a good player, but they're very inconsistent. They're hot and cold guys, and I think that's been the problem with the Wild. They haven't had a guy that they can count on to score 30-plus goals. Eric Stahl did it a couple of years ago, but I don't know. It's tough to see right now what's been going on with the Wild, and do you think that they just should I don't want to say blow it up. I don't like that word. But do you think the Wild should lean towards, okay, maybe we should start selling here and getting younger and maybe do what we see what the Rangers are doing right now?
Yes, I did think that, but then once you give the 5-year deal to Zuccarello, I feel like you're almost in a spot where you've tied your hands and can't really do that. That was sort of one of the amazing things to me was, even though I thought that it would have been very dumb to trade Jason Zucker, it at least sent the message of we're going to try to trade this player for, some players who are even younger than Jason Zucker, some perhaps picks, find a way to restock the system and to rebuild and retool and sort of build around the group that Fenton brought in their low 20s, including Donato. And then everything that they've done since kind of flipped. It almost seems to me like Fenton comes up with this plan that he wants to rebuild and then either changes his mind or talks to somebody above him in ownership who changes his mind for him and says, look, we cannot be missing the playoffs the next 2 or 3 years. You were brought here because you were supposed to tinker and make us better, not miss the playoffs 3 straight years. So I think that they should have gone down the road of not signing Zuccarello, not signing some of those pieces and being okay with, potentially being in the lottery next year. And now it seems like they're destined for what they have been the last 5 years, largely, which is a middling playoff team that maybe wins a playoff game or two, but would need a lot of help to actually win a playoff series, let alone 2 or 3. So that's why it just feels a little bit directionless to me, which obviously is not a great place to be.
Yeah, and in such a tough division, too. The Central Division is going to be pretty scary coming up this year. We're here with Chad Graff again of The Athletic. You can catch his stuff on The Athletic. Let's just talk real quick, last one here, about the Wild draft pick, Matthew Boldy. 6'2", 192, is going to play at Boston College next year. Left-handed winger. Give me your thoughts here on this pick. What do you think of this?
Yeah, I mean, by all accounts, he's been a very cool story, the way that he sort of shot up draft boards and the way that he goes to a stacked U.S. team where, he wasn't even sure if he was going to make that team, which, of course, was led by Jack Hughes and a ton of talent. And then shoots up the draft board the way that he does after making the team. By all accounts, a big body who can get to the front of the net, which they have not always had. I was kind of secretly, or not even secretly, but just hoping a little bit as Cole Caulfield was falling that the Wild might pounce on him because in a lot of ways he is what they have not had. But at the same time, I just have a hard time faulting them for taking Boldy. By all accounts, he looked good at development camp and should be a player for them for many years to come. It would have been super fun to see Caulfield here and to see him fly around the ice and to provide that speed and goal scoring that they haven't had. But Fenton apparently wanted to go with the bigger guy, and for now it's tough to fault him on that.
Chad Graff, everyone, thank you so much. Great job as always. You can read Chad at theathletic.com. Also follow him at Twitter at Chad Graff. Thank you again. Have a great day.
Thanks for having me.
Quick little shout out to Michael Russo, who was supposed to actually come on. He's been busy with all the Wild stuff. He actually gave me Chad's number, so good job here by Mike helping me out. And a good spot by Chad, very informative. I actually read a lot of his stuff on The Athletic. So I wanted to kind of get into, because obviously I like to have the analyst always has their time. I don't like to talk too much, but I also want to give you my opinion on what the Wild have done. Let's steer clear of the Twins for a little. They're in a good spot right now, so I don't have anything really negative to say. The lead has dwindled a little in the AL Central. You had to expect them to calm down eventually. I want to get on the Wild really quickly because what they're doing and how they're doing it is just tremendously frustrating as a fan. And you look at where I'm at right now, okay? I'm looking at the Rangers, who, I live in Jersey. You look at what the Rangers have done. They sent out a letter to their fans, I think it was 2 years ago, and basically said, look, to our fan base, we made our run, we got to the cup, we lost, we've tried, we just keep on hammering the same nail and it's not getting through. And we are going to blow this thing up. We're gonna send Ryan McDonough. We're gonna send all these guys, McDonough to the Lightning. We're gonna get picks back, and you just gotta be patient with us. And look at what the Rangers have done in